Hello friends, and welcome to another episode in the teaching series. Like always, we are going to have a lot of fun exploring something fascinating, not only from the Bible this time, but this is actually going to come from the land of Israel, the physical landscape that will help us to understand a major truth in the Bible. See, there's a guy by the name of Saint Jerome who at the end of the 4th century AD, or early 5th century AD, made this statement that the land is the fifth gospel. And this is what I love to share with people when I take them to the land of Israel or to the land of Turkey, because the landscape itself helps you understand so much about the Bible. Just walking it gives you all of this insight into the biblical story, but also the truths of life. And this is one of those teachings that we're going to dig into, not so much with the landscape like the physical land, but actually the bodies of water within that land. So on a map here, on the very western side of the land of Israel, and by the way, when the Israelites originally came into the land, they had both the Israel and Jordanian side of the Jordan River. So we're going to talk about the bodies of water within the land. But on the western side, you have the Mediterranean Sea. And so we're just going to kind of put that there so we know we've got a body of water there. But what I'm interested is in the bodies of waters kind of within the land proper. And at the very northern end, you have the Sea of Galilee. Now, the Sea of Galilee is absolutely stunning, and it's not very big at all. It is about 13 miles north to south. At its widest point here towards the northern part, it's 7 miles wide, so it's not very big. And when we hear Sea of Galilee, we actually think like the Mediterranean Sea. We're dealing with a sea here, but we're actually dealing with a lake. It is a freshwater lake. And again, it is absolutely stunning. Here's a sunrise photo that I took several years ago, and here's a picture from the top of Mount Arbel looking down onto the northwest corner. Here's another photo that I took just along the shoreline. Again, absolutely exquisite. And as you would imagine, with a beautiful lake like this, it's full of fish. Like there's just wildlife everywhere. So you see fishermen out all the time. There's all different kinds of fish. Birds are flying all over the place. It is just an absolutely gorgeous part in the land of Israel. And that's the Sea of Galilee in the very north. Then you have another body of water kind of within the land itself, and that is 65 miles south as the crow flies, and that is the Dead Sea. Now, the Dead Sea itself sits 1,350 feet below sea level. So the Sea of Galilee in the north actually sits 700 feet below sea level. But the Dead Sea is the lowest place on Earth, 1,350 feet below sea level. And like the Sea of Galilee, the Dead Sea is beautiful. In fact, this is a sunrise photo that I took just a couple of months ago when I was with a group in Israel. And it is, again, like the Sea of Galilee, it is gorgeous, but it functions very differently than the Sea of Galilee. The Sea of Galilee, this freshwater lake in the northern part of the country, there is a reason why the Dead Sea is actually called the Dead Sea, because nothing lives in the Dead Sea. I mean, you get like a couple of things like bacteria or like an algae, but as far as fish, there are no fish. Nothing can survive in the Dead Sea. And the reason for that is because of its salt content. The Dead Sea is really, really salty. How salty? Well, just to give you an idea, the average sea, the average ocean in the world is anywhere from 3 to 6% salt content. Friends, the Dead Sea is 35% salt. This is why nothing lives in the Dead Sea. Everything is dead. It's because of this high concentration of salt. Now, what's fascinating about the Dead Sea, and the reason why people go to the Dead Sea all the time, is because they want to swim in it. But it's a very different kind of experience than you normally get swimming in a normal body of water. In fact, I remember the very first time that I went into the Dead Sea, you have this moment where you walk out, and then you get to the point where the water is getting higher and higher. And then all you have to do is just slightly lean back and your feet fly up in front of you, because the Dead Sea is extremely buoyant because of the salt content. And so you don't necessarily swim in the Dead Sea, you float, or in a sense hover, on the surface of the Dead Sea. Here's a photo that I took of my classmates and I when I was living in the land of Israel when we went to the Dead Sea. And notice this dude right here. He's got a digital camera. His feet are not touching the ground. So you're on top of the water. In fact, here is a photo I took of my friend. She's reading a book. I mean, it's like half of her body is up out of the water. You can sit there, you can read a magazine, you can read a book. I mean, I guess, this guy's taking pictures, with his camera, and you can just enjoy literally floating on top of water. Here's a picture that Todd Boland took. And by the way, if the photos I'm not showing on here are from me, these are all from Todd. So between Todd and I, we've covered this entire deck. This is a great photo, because it just shows you how much of your body you can get up out of the water. Now, what's interesting about the Dead Sea and sad is that there are a number of people who drown every year. You think, how in the world can you drown in the Dead Sea? Well, what happens, and this is among the older population, is that they're floating on top of the Dead Sea on their back, and they end up rolling over, and their body just rolls all the way over onto the water like this, but then they don't have enough strength to roll their body back. And so if there isn't anybody nearby, if somebody's out early in the morning or late in the evening, literally they just get so tired that they drop their face and they drown, because the Dead Sea is so unbelievably buoyant. And so for these two bodies of water, the Sea of Galilee in the north and then the Dead Sea in the south, these are the two bodies of water that are inside the land itself, and yet they are so unbelievably different. And again, they're only 65 miles apart. And here's where it gets even more interesting, is that you have between the Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea a river. It's known as the Jordan River. So it flows from the Sea of Galilee into the Dead Sea, and the Jordan is actually in Hebrew Yardan, which means to descend or the descender, that because the Sea of Galilee is 700 feet below sea level, and then the Dead Sea is 1,350 feet below sea level, obviously the river flows south. And because it winds, even though it kind of looks like it's pretty much a straight line, it winds, even though it's only 65 miles as the crow flies, it actually flows 130 miles down into the Dead Sea. And the Jordan River is not very big. I mean, it's nothing like the Nile, nothing like the Tigris or Euphrates. It's a really, really small body of water. And it connects the Sea of Galilee to the Dead Sea. But this is not technically where the Jordan River begins. It doesn't begin coming out the south end of the Sea of Galilee. It actually begins much further north. And so it's actually got several headwaters. Here is one at Caesarea Philippi. So this is one of the headwaters. And then these, along with a few other waters, collect here in what's known as the Hula Basin. And then what you have is that from the Hula, it flows down into the Sea of Galilee, and then out of the Sea of Galilee down into the Dead Sea. So here's where just the Jordan River and how it works makes this whole picture of the Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea so fascinating, is that they are both fed by the same river. Yet in the north, you have a Sea of Galilee that's a fresh water water body lake that's just teeming with life, with vegetation. It's just absolutely bursting with vitality. And then you have the Dead Sea where nothing can survive, and you basically just go on the Dead Sea today to float on it, and yet they're fed by the exact same source. And the question becomes, how is this possible? How is it that the same river, Jordan, flowing into the Sea of Galilee, this thing is fresh water bursting with life, and it flows into the Dead Sea, and yet nothing is able to survive at all? How is this possible? Well, the answer lies in the fact that the Sea of Galilee receives water into it, and then it also passes it along, whereas the Dead Sea only receives and it gives nothing away. And in a sense, these two bodies of water speak to a truth in life, which is to live is to give. That there's this understanding, that there's this reality that when you receive and then you pass on, that this is like the engine of life. But if you are someone who just simply receives and passes nothing on, it's as if you're experiencing a sort of death. You see, in Jesus' ministry, everything he did was about passing on blessing, passing on goodness, passing on things to other people. In fact, at a really critical moment, he's having this conversation with his disciples. And as it's recorded in Mark 10:45, Jesus says, "For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many." I mean, even Jesus is saying, listen, I didn't come to receive, I came to give. I came to serve. I had something to pass along for other people to live and thrive. And this is what Jesus demonstrated in his life. It's what he taught his disciples. At one point, he's talking to his disciples and he's saying, listen, freely you have received and freely give. And even after the ministry of Jesus' time here on earth was over with, the Apostle Paul, who is speaking to the Ephesian elders at Miletus, recorded in the book of Acts, says this in Acts 20:35. Paul is saying this. He says, "In everything I did, I showed you by that this kind of hard work, we must help the weak, remembering the words the Lord Jesus himself said, 'It is more blessed to give than to receive.'" That at the heart of what Jesus did, at the heart of what Paul was seeking to do, at the heart of the entire biblical story is this idea that to live is to give. And this has applications across all aspects of life. I mean, you can think about this in a number of different ways. It's just ultimately, what kind of a person are you? What kind of a body of water are you? Are you like the Sea of Galilee, that when someone gives you respect, you give respect? When someone blesses you, you try to find a way to bless others with that. When you have received, you're kind of thinking, okay, so how can I give? How can I pass this along? Because at the heart of someone who's like the Sea of Galilee is this understanding that blessing is never intended simply for ourselves. It's always intended to be passed on. That it does something to us and we're grateful for that. We bless God for that. But ultimately, when we receive these blessings, we're kind of looking at this from a perspective of saying, okay, so what does it look like for me now to bless someone else with the blessing that I have received? Because if we're like the Sea of Galilee, we're receiving always with the intention of going, okay, so how can I bless? How can I give? How can I pass this on? But if we're like the Dead Sea, then we just think that blessings are for us, or we're always looking to receive, to take, without any thought of, well, how do I pass this on? And when we live like that, it's like something begins to die within us. And we can look at this blessing from influence, from power, from just people coming along and doing something kind for us. But I want to just spend a couple of moments thinking about this in terms of wealth, because this is something that I find fascinating in connection to the Sea of Galilee. And in fact, the first person to really tip me off to this, and actually this phrase, to live is to give, is from a guy by the name of Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. And in his book, To Heal a Fractured World, he says this about wealth in connection to this body of water reality that we find in the land of Israel. He just says this, and I love this. He says, the privilege of wealth lies not in what it allows us to do for ourselves, but what it enables us to do for others. That's the privilege we get. That's the life-giving aspect that we get to enjoy, is that when we have received, we also look for a way to pass it on. And wealth is supposed to be like that. Influence is supposed to be like that. Good things that we receive, we just want to be like the Sea of Galilee, because when we receive and we're able to give, we burst with life, not only in our own soul, but we provide life, if you will, for other people, that God can work through us in order to bless and nourish and just ignite this vibrancy of life into someone else. But if we're like the Dead Sea, we can just become so toxic to ourselves and to other people if we don't recognize that to live is to give, and we want to be the kind of people that flourish well, and it comes when we are willing to pass along the blessings that we receive. So isn't that cool? I mean, the land is like this in so many ways, and this is one of my most favorite visuals and teachings, because every single time I see a picture of the Sea of Galilee or the Dead Sea, or I actually get to go and visit these places several times a year, I'm just reminded, man, am I the kind of person that is giving, because when I give, I live, because to live is to give. Well, friends, I hope this blesses you. I hope this challenges you as you think through how you can be just a continual source of giving to nourish other people's lives. So if you're engaging this anywhere else other than at walkingthetext.com, you can head over there, leave some comments. Maybe you can leave some thoughts or suggestions about how people can live out this lifestyle. You can also now subscribe to the podcast. For those of you who may be watching this and didn't know that there's a podcast now, it's the audio version of this. You can snag that as well. But friends, thanks so much for stopping by. May you have a great rest of your week, and may you continue to walk out the text well in your life.